All right, because of the setup here, you've got the camera above me for a little bit. So, I won't have the screen on me too much here. But we've got a little bit of a shortcut for fractions when you're adding or subtracting. I'm not showing this to you with the adding because I wanted you to learn the long way, and if you didn't learn the long way, you would not have tried it with the adding or the subtracting. So I didn't show this to you with the addition because I wanted you to learn the long way, because sometimes that way is easier too. The shortcut's not always the easiest way. Do not think that this is always the easiest way, because sometimes when we get into mixed numbers, this way is not the easier way. So do not just immediately jump to this way because it's simpler when it is just fractions, because it doesn't always work better for mixed numbers. Okay, so we will try a couple here, and then you'll be able to try some just like we always do. Watch a couple, write down your notes, pause the video as you need to, try them as we go, pause it, try it, play it, see if you're right, go from there. Okay, all right, first one, we have 1/2 minus 2/5. Okay. What a lot of people call this method, they call it the butterfly method. And part of the reason that they call this the butterfly method, you'll see in a minute, is because we're going to make the wings, and then we're going to make the little tail and the antennas. Okay. Starting off here, we're going to make the wings. And the wings are going to tell us what we're going to multiply. So I'm going to take those two numbers and I'm going to multiply those together. So 2 times 2, even though there's a minus sign in there, I am multiplying those two numbers. So I'm taking 2 times 2 and I'm getting my answer of 4. Okay, now I'm going to get my other butterfly wing. And again, even though I have a minus sign in here, I'm going to take my 1 times 5, and 1 times 5 equals 5. Okay, and I'm going to take my 5. Now this is where my minus sign comes in. Since I'm subtracting in this problem, I'm going to take my 5 minus my 4. So my 5 minus my 4 ends up giving me my numerator, which ends up being 1. Okay, so that ends up giving me my numerator of 1 for my answer. And then to get my denominator, I'm going to use the tail. Oh, I forgot to get my antenna over here. Alrighty, butterfly's looking a little, I don't know. To get my tail, I'm going to take my 2 times my 5. And 2 times 5 is 10. And that's how I get my denominator. So I took my 2 times my 5, and my answer ends up being 1/10. And that particular one I cannot simplify, so my answer ends up being 1/10 for that particular problem. Okay, my next problem, and as we go, we'll go a little bit faster with these. My next problem is 2/5 times, or 4/5 minus 2/3. Now, if you think that you've got this figured out and you think that you can try it and then come back and check with me, go ahead, try it and see. Okay, so we're going to take our first butterfly wing. We have our 4 times our 3, which ends up giving us our 12. Okay, and then we have our 5 times our 2, which gives us our 10. And to give us our numerator, we're going to take our 12 minus our 10, which gives us 2. Okay, and to give our denominator, we are going to multiply our denominators, which is 5 times 3, which ends up being 15. And we cannot simplify, So our answer ends up being 2/15. All right, next problem. We have 2/3 minus 1/4. Again, if you feel like you have a good handle on it, go ahead, pause, solve it, come back and see if you've got it. Our butterfly wings. 2 times our 4 gives us our 8. Our other wing is our 3 times our 1, which is our 3. So to get our numerator, we're going to take our 8 minus our 3, which gives us 5. Okay, denominator, we're going to multiply our two denominators, which is 3 and 4. So we multiply those two, and we end up with 12. Can we simplify that at all? No, we cannot. So our answer ends up being 5/12. All right. Okay, our next one we have is 4/5 minus 1/2. Again, if you feel like you have a good take, pause and then check back with us. We have our 4 times our 2, which ends up being 8. We have our 5 times our 1, which is 5. So we're going to subtract those since we have our subtraction sign here. So 8 minus 5 ends up being 3. To get our denominator, we're going to multiply our two denominators. So 5 minus 2, or 5 times 2, sorry. So 5 times 2 is 10. And can we simplify 3/10? No, we cannot. So that is our final answer. All right, we have 2 more left. All right, 3/4 minus 1/2. Again, pause it if you're able to try it on your own. All right, multiply 3 times 2, which is 6. Multiply 4 times 1, which is 4. And we're going to subtract those. So 6 minus 4, which is 2. And then we've got our bottom. So we're going to multiply those. So 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, and then we have to see, can we simplify those? We can simplify those. They're both even. Okay, so 2, I could take 2 times 1. And 8, I could take 2 times 4. And with those, I could cross off then my 2's. And I'm left with my 1 and 4, which means I'm left with 1/4. So my answer for that one would end up being 1/4. 1 left. Again, go ahead and pause it once we have the problem written down. Try it and see if you can get our answer for this particular one. All right. Multiply. 5 times 2 would give us 10. And 6 times 1 would give us 6. And because we're subtracting here, we are going to subtract those two numbers. So 10 minus 6 would give us 4. And our denominator, we're going to multiply those two. Oh, wrote my subtraction sign again. We're going to multiply those two and try it again. That's going to give us 12. Can we simplify that? Yes, we can. looking at that, I could take 4 times 1, and I could take 4 times 3. So I could cross off my 4's. I'm left with 1 over 3, which would be 1/3. Now, some people might look at this and have said, well, I could do 2 times 2. You're right. So you could have done 2 times 2, and then you could have done 2 times 6. Okay, so I would have crossed off my 2's and been left with 2/6. But then here you could have done 2 times 1 and 2 times 3. And then you could have crossed off your 2's and you're still left with 1/3. So when you're taking out your greatest common factor, you're just reducing how many times you need to simplify. Okay, so it's just taking out a step. All right, now you can do these steps with addition as well. The only difference is instead of subtracting here, you're going to add. So this, instead of having 10 minus 6, you would have had 10 plus 6 if this had an addition sign instead. That's the only thing that it would have changed. And then you would have ended up with a mixed number instead of a fraction, because you would have ended up with an improper fraction. That's the only difference that you would have had. So you could do this with addition, you can do it with subtraction, but this is a shortcut way, and a lot of people call it the butterfly method because this kind of looks like a butterfly. So hopefully this will be helpful to some of you. Alrighty.